Good morning. We are going to talk about the muscular system. So first let's talk about the functions of the muscle. In your body you've got 650 muscles. They support movement, so things like controlling walking, talking, sitting, standing, eating, and they also help you maintain your posture, circulate your blood, and move other things throughout your body, and we're going to talk about a couple of those muscles in just a second. The other thing they do is they help you produce heat. Think about when you work out, when you're walking or running, doing those kind of things, your muscles are contracting and relaxing. And again, we'll talk about the different enzymes that cause that to happen. But when that happens, our body temperature goes up, and so that's how muscles help with heat production. The other things that you might not think about is that muscles help us breathe, also known as respiration, our eyes when we blink, all right? Also, you want to pay attention here to the word sphincter, okay? Sphincters are specific types of muscles that control body openings and passages. So let's start with body openings, all right? You have one of the most important ones that is a sphincter pylori, okay? And that's in your stomach, and that is right there at the opening of the small intestine. It holds food into your stomach, so it lets it mix with the gastric juices that help break down your food, and so that's the sphincter pylori. The other ones you have is your sphincter ani externus, which just means it helps your anus stay closed so that you don't have a bowel movement just fall out. Okay, so think about when you feel like you need to go number 2, and then you might clench your anus so that it doesn't happen until you can get to the bathroom. That is an actual muscle called a sphincter ani externus. Next one, you've got sphincter urethra, which is basically like it sounds probably to you, or hopefully it helps hold your urine so that you don't wet yourself. And sometimes when our muscles weaken from having babies, okay, we may not be able to control that muscle as much, all right? And then you also have one in your eye, the sphincter papillae or pupilla, however you pronounce it, and that's just a ring of fibers in the iris, okay? So think about how small the iris is, and it contracts the pupil in the presence of bright light. Next one, you've got lots of muscle cells and tissues, and you can see that here. Really important to know that your skeletal muscle is the only voluntary muscle in your human body, which means you control it, okay? The only one. Now, you're going to see here a bunch of different terms, things like sarcolemma, sarcoplasm, sarcoplasmic reticulum, myofibrils, striations, acetylcholine, acetylcholinesterase, okay? Let's just kind of sum it up here, and you can look at some notes that I made for you, but those first 3 terms, those are all referring to the microanatomy, which is also another word for the cellular makeup of your muscle fiber. So in your muscle fiber, you have cells. The cells are the microanatomy, all right? And so in your muscle cell, or in your muscle fiber, your sarcolemma is the cell membrane of that muscle fiber, okay? The sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm of that cell membrane inside your muscle fiber, all right? And I would encourage you to look in your ebook, and there's a little video that you can watch, and it explains and it shows a visualization, so it might help you to understand a little bit. But just know those 3 terms are specifically related to the microanatomy of your muscle fiber, also known as the cell, okay? Really important, though, that you know the functions of acetylcholine, okay? So what you want to know is that also the sarcoplasmic reticulum, that's a smooth reticulum that forms interconnecting tubules surrounding myofibrils. So that's how your muscles get the striations, or striations are also known as stripes, okay? Skeletal muscles respond only to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, okay? And so when I say that the skeletal muscle only responds to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, that means our brain sends an enzyme or a neurotransmitter, okay, that's the little guys that carry the message to the muscle and tell it to contract or relax. The neurotransmitter has to carry the message via the acetylcholine to tell our muscles to contract, okay? And then acetylcholinesterase is the ones that tell our muscles to relax, okay? So those two terms look very similar, but they do two different things. They're both carried by neurotransmitters from our brain to tell our muscles either to contract or relax, okay? Next one, you've got visceral muscles, okay, or smooth muscles. The thing to know about this is that you find visceral muscles inside organs, such as your stomach and intestines, as well as the blood vessels, okay? One thing to note here is that smooth muscles don't have the stripes or the striations, okay? You find those in the skeletal or the cardiac muscle, okay? It's the weakest of all muscles, and it does help to move substances through organs. It's controlled by the unconscious part of the brain. So think about it. We don't control what happens in our intestines, okay? Our stomach might be cramping and hurting, but we cannot tell ourselves, okay, stop cramping, stop hurting to our stomach, right? So we will try to go get medicine to make it stop, but we can't stop it, okay? Now, skeletal muscle you can, because you can stop moving, okay? Or you can massage something and it might stop it from cramping up, but we can't do anything about our visceral muscles, all right? And then also the cardiac muscle, that's an involuntary muscle. We know what the cardiac muscle does, right? It pumps blood throughout your body, and again, it's involuntary. All right, next to talk about are these a couple of things here that are responsible for production of energy in our muscles. The first one you've got is creatine phosphate. So that provides basically a quick source of energy for our muscles to contract when we need to move. So think about like when a person is a bodybuilder or they're trying to build muscle, they will take creatine supplements, and that is supposed to give their muscles more energy, which basically will help them have more oxygen in them and be healthier in appearance, okay? The next one is aerobic respiration, okay? And a couple of terms here to know when it comes to that. You're going to see a term called aerobic respiration, which is this, which just means that your muscles have cellular energy because they have oxygen in them. But you also may see a term called anaerobic respiration. That means they don't have oxygen in them, okay? So let's focus here on aerobic respiration. So it's the process of producing cellular energy involving oxygen, all right? Cells break down food in the mitochondria in a long process. And so that just means, remember, mitochondria give our cells energy, okay? And so what you need to know about this is that you have to have aerobic respiration in your muscles if you want them to have energy and work correctly, okay? Now, when your muscles don't have oxygen, that's when you get this next term called lactic acid production, okay? And that's basically your muscles have cells that are producing lactic acid, okay? When they're trying to metabolize carbohydrates with no with no oxygen, all right? So basically, during high-intensity exercise, muscles expend energy so rapidly that when they outrun the circulatory system ability to provide them with oxygen, as they rely more on anaerobic metabolism, they produce lactic acid, which will accumulate in the bloodstream, okay? Now, the other thing you want to pay attention to is this next term called oxygen debt. Let me tell you what happens there, okay? So, basically think about when you exercise, okay, and you're done exercising, and you feel spent, and you feel out of breath, okay, and your trainer, or you may have heard that you should walk around, walk it off, okay? What you're doing is returning your body to its normal state, because it's called oxygen debt, what happens. So it's known as the additional oxygen that must be taken into the body after vigorous exercise to restore all systems to the normal state. That's oxygen debt. That's your body paying back any oxygen that's been borrowed from your hemoglobin, your myoglobin, which is an iron-containing substance similar to hemoglobin that is found in the muscle fibers. It's returning air into your lungs and body fluids. Okay, that's why you're supposed to walk around. Okay, don't just stop. Now, muscle fatigue. Why does muscle fatigue happen? Why, after we work out or we do even maybe moderate, mild exercise, do we have muscle fatigue? All right, so it basically happens because we have increased acidity. Okay, so that just means we have a buildup of lactic acid in our muscles or in our tissues. And so we feel like our muscles are tired. Again, walk around, walk that out, as they say. All right, next here, look at these structures, okay? These structures for the skeletal muscles, it's important just to kind of know what they do, know what the purpose is. So really important to know that skeletal muscles covered and a layer of connective muscle tissue. That's your epimysium. All right, it protects friction between your muscles and the bones. It keeps your muscles and bones, okay, from having friction, because remember, muscles are attached to bones. They insert at bones, around bones. So of course friction might happen, and this protects any kind of basically injury or hurt, okay? Then you have fascia. Those are bundles of fibers, okay? And then you have aponeurosis. That's just a flattened or ribbon-shaped tendon of a pearly white color, iridescent, similar in structure to a tendon. Okay, tendons and aponeurosis are connected on one end with the muscles and on the other end with movable structures such as bones, cartilage, ligaments, and fibrous membranes. All right, this slide is a little different in relation to what I'll talk about in the lecture here versus what I have on the notes and what you see on your slide. So really important that from this slide, it's important that you know what these terms mean, okay? So look up origin, okay? This says attachment for less movable bone. So think about when you see the word origin. Look in the picture where you see origins of biceps brachii. You see the origin there is up in the shoulder, okay? And look at the opposite of origin, which is the next term, insertion. It says attachment for more movable bone. So you see insertion at the bottom there by the elbow says insertion of biceps brachii. That's because you have more movement in your elbow, okay, for that particular muscle than you do in your shoulder for that particular muscle, okay? Next one, prime mover. That's called your agonist. That's responsible for most of the movement, okay? Next one, synergist. That just stabilizes your joints. And then the next one, antagonist. That's movement opposite of the prime mover, okay? So let's look at some terms that I put on your notes. And you should know some of this from medical terminology. If you don't, let's talk about that. So let's talk about a couple of them that maybe we haven't talked about. Go to protraction, moving a body part anteriorly. That just means you're moving it forward. Retraction to the back, okay? Eversion and inversion, that is related to the foot. So if you're everting your foot, you're turning the sole, which is the bottom of your foot, out, okay? And then inversion is you're turning the bottom of your foot in, all right? Next slide, major muscles in your body. Listen, I'm not going to test you over the specific names of these muscles because frankly, as a medical assistant, the main ones you need to know are the ones when it comes to injections. Okay, so I am going to expect you to know a couple of them only because of injections, and I will tell you what those are. So let's focus first on the head, okay? Important just to know, and I put them in your notes, the different types of muscles. Again, I'm not going to test you on them. In your arm, okay, I do want you to know where your arm muscles are. Specifically, I will test you over your deltoid. Again, in your arm, I'm going to test you over the deltoid. Why? Because you give injections in the deltoid muscle in your arm. Okay? Next one. Look at the ones for your wrist. Those are important. Not going to test you on those. Okay? I will test you on the respiratory muscles, meaning I want you to know what they do. Respiratory assists with breathing, okay? And they do include your diaphragm. We talked about the diaphragm. Important to know the respiratory. Again, you will be tested on respiratory, okay? Next one, I do want you to know some of your abdominal muscles because you can give injections around them. So I do want you to know what your external and internal obliques are and your transverse and rectus abdominis. All right, moving on down to your leg muscles. Okay, in the legs, I want you to know for your test what your gluteus maximus is, your gluteus medius. I want you to know what the biceps femoris is, okay, and the quad group, which is your rectus femoris, your vastus lataris, your vastus medialis, and your vastus intermedius. Okay, I want you to know those for your test. Be able to label those. Next one for this slide. Really important. This slide's pretty self-explanatory, but I want you to review your notes in addition to this slide because it does talk about something called loss of muscle. Okay, that happens when you get about age 30, and it gets just progressively worse and worse every year. And that just means that the amount of muscle tissue that your body makes and the number of fibers that it makes decreases with age. Okay, and that's called sarcopenia. And so it will also, as you age, your bones and your joints deteriorate. So depending on your genetic makeup also can contribute to the extent at which you age when it relates to your musculoskeletal system. Okay, so when it talks about decline in speed and strength of muscle contraction and difficulty with dexterity and gripping ability as you age, your difficulty with dexterity and gripping, that just means you have a harder time picking things up or holding on to them. Okay, some lifestyle adjustments that you can make are to use assistive devices to help you with things like canes, walkers, wheelchairs. The more you exercise, the more you use your muscles, so the stronger they are. And then you might look into some physical therapy if you age or your patient ages and they're not able to move around or grip properly. All right, and last slide. I want you to know every single one of these for your test. So remember, you have a card. Important to look at them. First, let's talk about botulism. Okay, it's caused by bacteria, and it affects muscle groups of an infant. Okay, not common in the United States. Fibromyalgia results in joint and muscle pain, primarily in women between the ages of 20 and 50. Fibromyalgia is not really understood as far as where it comes from. It is not genetic. A lot of people think it's brought on by stress. Muscular dystrophy, that's just a group of inherited disorders, and it can affect different people at different ages. Okay, next one, myasthenia gravis. It's muscle weakness throughout your body, and it's thought to be an autoimmune condition. Okay, that just means your immune system attacks itself. All right, rhabdomyolysis. That is an extreme condition that results in damaged kidneys secondary to filtration of toxins released by muscles. This I have seen before in action. It's excessive exercise as well as drug overdose. And that just means basically that if someone exercises in an extreme manner, their kidneys cannot keep up with the amount of exercise they're doing to recycle the toxins throughout their body, and they will and can die. Same thing with people that are using drugs. Their kidneys cannot filter all the toxins, and so they end up dying. Some people make it, but a lot of people don't. Tendonitis, all right, that's inflammation of a tendon, just like it sounds, and the attachment to the bone, most commonly in the ship, you know what I mean, the shoulder, the hip, the heel, and the hamstrings. Okay, why? Because that's where those insertions happen. Okay, Next one, tetanus. A lot of people call it lockjaw, and that's just results from a bacteria located in soil, okay? And so a lot of people that get tetanus need to get tetanus shots. Torticulosis or torticollis, also known as wry neck, can be acquired or congenital. I would encourage you to look up a picture of that. That will help you understand a little better. And lastly, trichinosis. That's caused by worms found in undercooked meat. All right, and it says the worms infect skeletal muscle, and there's no cure for this disease even after the worms are killed. So if you have ever heard of certain religions that won't eat pork because of worms, that is exactly why. It's a real thing. I'm not saying don't eat pork, I'm just saying it's a real thing.